The rule in trampolining is don't punch the jump, which means that 2 or more people land at the same time, and it hurls you in every direction. The whole event is about the uncontrollability of that happening. To expose the nature of ragged, rugged, transgressive, outlawed action. And it's important to me because it's essentially all I care about. You know, it's my passion, it's what interests me. And why I believe it's important to expose is because I think it not just enthralls people, it makes them feel alive when they witness it. They feel empowered by it, and they feel in a weird small way that they've done it, even though in fact they've only witnessed it. So it's unpredictable, out of control, all the things I think of as real movement. Has to be unpredictable, has to be probably fast, dangerous, hard, extreme, high, low, even though we can only get as low as the floor, which is also annoying. You know, the hegemony of the floor is abusive. You know, so many times I've watched styrofoam in the wind, and I was like, that's it, that's real movement. Doesn't lie. Real movement doesn't lie. Real movement is itself. It's about itself. You know, you see somebody fall, that's real movement. Another thing is to just have, rather than, I have in this evening of work 5 formal pieces. I have 21, and some of them last a second. Okay. Some of them last 30 seconds. Why do we insist on creating all this material and then connecting it? Why do we connect it into a dance, right? Into a 5-minute thing. And that's where I realized, oh, we shouldn't. It should be like mud wrestling. One move, get up, go back to the center. Next move, get up, go back to the center. Stop, start, that's action. What would be an action event that would be archetypal in that way? And we haven't named or developed a nomenclature for anything to do with the field of action, because we think of action and we think sports, or we think dancing. And so my whole beginning of exploring these things was to separate, you know, time, space, and human movement potential out as separate entities. And also, when I watch dancers dancing, I've decided that's not real movement, because it's volitional, and they're controlling it. It has to be out of control for it to occupy real movement's sphere, according to me. And my point, why all this, you know, nitpicking about movement is that since I'm putting on an action event, my original attraction to dance was that I thought it was the art of action. I did not understand the tradition with music and how they battered the ability of movement to develop its own compositional system within its own domain, but they borrowed these rural systems from music and oral events. So I try and set up conditions that will not allow you to repeat yourself. Let's say a body's flipping and another body's diving through their negative space, and another body, when they're done, lands on each other, or they hit in the air and then land. So it's really, you're very, very vulnerable to the split second and the square inch, to what that other body is doing and when they do it. It's constructed in an order, but the actual, it's like this, an ever-shifting sand pile. You know, it's like never quite the same ever. So because it's all felt timing, we don't count. It's based on, once it starts, it's sort of like sometimes you start a piece and you realize you're in a car that's going too fast and it's not going to slow down. And so it really is a game of catch up a little bit. Like 2 people go flying into the air, turn backwards in an axe and slam into each other. That's how they stop. With as much force as they can, so they'll go the distance, you know. Well, one, even aiming at someone in the air, slamming into them, makes you not want to do it. Turning backwards is the last thing you want to do. Then you're hurtling through the air and you don't quite know when you're going to hit, because where's the other person? So it's really asking them to go over here. And I'm saying, but you can't get hurt. That's the other rule. You can't get hurt. And it's very interesting what happens in their psyche and in their just intuitive choice to bail out over and over again. And they hated rehearsing that dance. I say, okay, let's rehearse air impact. It would be like, I mean, I don't think movement actually should ever be repeated, because every time you repeat it, it becomes less itself. So I try and set up, but I'm very saddled with the pragmatics of my economic model. That's all, you know. Somebody was going to give me, oh, I dove through glass once 5 years ago. Do you keep paying me? No, they won't. So I have to produce something that's tangible, like a show. My thought is people cannot look at movement without their associations of their own experiential, from their own physical histories. They impose those memories on what they see, and they write their own story about the action. So spatiality contextualizes movement and creates it. Without space, you can't move. Finally come to believe that they want to be told a story. When they sit down, they sort of want, once upon a time, long, long time ago, so-and-so, da-da-da-da-da-da. Some manner, they want a story. Some people grip their handrails so hard from watching. They've definitely had some kind of a physical experience. Whether it's of what we're doing, it's because of what we're doing that they have a physical experience. Like right now, watching us build this show, they feel a lot of ownership. They go, I was there the other day, and they weren't half as good as they are today. And they talk to everyone else. Everyone talks to everyone. It is a social experience, not an artistic experience. Yeah, I design a space so that we're able to get to a place that we wouldn't be able to get to spatially without the equipment. Then we'll eventually be able to remove all the structures and occupy the spaces we occupy with them, without them. Like, for instance, what dance could I make with this vertical truss? Not much. I could climb up, I could climb down, I could hang off. But so when I come up with a thing like a surface exploder, like the trampoline, it's a fairly big range of what you can do. These bungees, which start by jumping off that ledge, fairly big range of what you could do. And I don't know what, it's sort of like you start experimenting. But we have learned a certain behavior pattern in our culture where we walk through the doors. Right. We don't even try and go through the wall. And in fact, and our sense of experimentation has diminished because we make assumptions about following the rules that have been ordained by architecture, which is you go through the door and not the windows. You don't try, at least try a few times, to leave the room in a different way. You go through the area that was designed for you to leave through. Now, obviously, it's practical to do that, because most people would claim and say, I'll bet you $1 million, no matter how hard you try and leave that way, you'll never get through. But my point is, and has been in the investigation of movement in general, is if you don't ask those hard questions, or on the other hand, if you do ask the hard questions, you come up with information you never would have had you not asked those questions.
What we're trying to respond to is conventional space, which is actually very limiting. So what we're trying to put together is frameworks where we put together something that offers multiple ways of occupying the space, but in fact may be obscuring the pure action. So
yeah, I mean, it is a really interesting. I'm still working on this problem, and I have, in a certain way, feel I've failed to date in addressing the problem. In a way, the solutions are not more complex, I find, as I work more and more, but simpler. And the hardest thing to get to is what's the simple condition that will elucidate the actual thing. And I feel like I could spend a good amount of time on each one of these spatial designs with my company. Although I have a very rough company, and they would probably break everything in here. But you find out just by doing action at all how hard it is to get the right kind of hardware to hang on to any kind of force.